In this video, we are going to learn how highlights and shadows affect our images and how we can use them in various situations. So without any further ado, let's get started. The adjustments we have seen so far, such as exposure, brightness, contrast and brilliance, are global adjustments, meaning they affect all the tonal values like shadows, midtones and highlights. What if you want to target a specific tonal value? For example, what if you want to target only the bright areas of your image? Or what if you want to target only the dark areas of your image? That's where the highlights and shadows adjustments come in. Now let's understand these adjustments through an example. Now in this image, you can see the highlights are too bright and the shadows are too dark. Also, they lack details. Let's say you want to brighten the shadows and darken the highlights. And for that, if you use exposure or brightness, it will affect both the shadows and highlights. For example, if I try to brighten the shadows using exposure, you can see we are losing details in the highlights. And if I try to darken the highlights using exposure, we are losing details in the shadows. And we don't want that. So what do we do now? In this scenario, we can use highlights adjustment to target only the bright areas and shadows adjustment to target only the dark areas. So let's go to highlights and let's decrease it to around -40. Now let's go to shadows and increase it to around 85. There you go. Let's have a look at the overall before and after. Here is the before and here is the after. We have altered the brightness of both shadows and highlights and also recovered a lot of details in them. Now let's see the limitations. If you overdo the shadows adjustment while brightening the dark areas, it will introduce digital noise in those areas. For example, in this image, as I take the shadow slider all the way up to 100, you can notice a lot of tiny dots in the darker region of the image. And this is what we call digital noise or grains in an image. And this will affect the overall sharpness and quality of the image. So you have to keep this in mind when you play with shadows. The next limitation is about recovering details. We have seen how these adjustments alter brightness and recover details from dark shadows and bright highlights. But there is a limit to it. You can adjust brightness and bring back details which are lost while playing with other adjustments like exposure, contrast, etc. Also, you can recover details from slightly overexposed or underexposed images, where the data are not completely lost or washed out when we capture an image. But if an image is extremely overexposed or underexposed while taking a picture, we can never recover those details. For example, look at this image right here. The highlights are completely washed out, and in this one, the shadows are completely crushed. No matter whatever we do, increase the shadows and decrease the highlights, we can never recover any of the details because there is no data to recover from. To prevent this scenario, you have to make sure to set the right exposure in your camera when you take a picture. So these are the things you have to keep in mind when you play with shadows and highlights adjustments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give us a like and also don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell icon for future updates. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.